Hello, I welcome you once again to Hansraj e-Samvaad. Today I am here with yet another lecture on the lecture series Individual and Society offered by the Department of English across the various colleges of the University of Delhi. My name is Piyush and I teach English at Hansraj College. I welcome you all once again. Today we will begin with the unit Living in a Globalized World, which is a new unit, which will include several essays, poems, articles on the theme of globalization and what you can term as cross-cultural, literary and social encounters. The other units that we did were more or less specific, to the term under which they were earlier categorized. But when you come to the unit that is Living in a Globalized World, you will realize that the limits of this unit are endless and they may or may not be specific to the term under which they are categorized. But don't you think this is exactly what globalization denotes? Is this exactly not what globalization indicates? The world today, when we talk about globalization, is perhaps not getting expanded, rather, it is becoming closer and smaller, right? It has now become more interconnected with all sorts of experiences, positions, and there is a certain amalgamation, you can say, of varied cultural and social forces in the world today. This is the reason I said that the texts prescribed in our syllabus under this unit, Living in the Globalized World, are not exactly specific to the term under which they have been categorized, right? It is all encompassing, you can say that. On the contrary, when we read Dalit writings, the experiences were mostly related to caste discriminations and politics. But under the unit War and Violence, if you remember, the experiences were again related to war, violence, its aftermath, and its psychological effects. But under the unit and also under the unit Gender, the experiences were all related to gender and its varied nuances. That's what this entire collection of books, this Individual and Society actually is, where they have given subject specific literature, right? But in this unit, Living in the Globalized World, I can say the sky is the limit, right? So I hope I was able to make my point more clearly. Okay, so at the same time, we have to understand the globalized world is huge, right? It is at the same time it is very compact as well, right? And there is this paradox because it has been made compact and interconnected. So there is an interconnectedness of terms. What I'm trying to say is that in this particular unit, the thing that we need to understand is that there are multiple areas and multiple interpretations and multiple cultural intersections, okay, in this particular unit, that is the last unit, and we have certain texts, right? Because when we talk about global studies, it requires, a broad approach, to behold the big picture, because the world is very big, right? But even though the world is very big, it has come very, it has become very small because of the interconnectedness. The fact that right now I'm sitting at my college studio at Hansraj College, and we are both studying right now, we are both interacting, and you guys are watching this video on YouTube is because of globalization itself, right? It's also an offshoot of the globalized world, and internet is one of the most defining inventions, which have led to a more globalized world, right? So as I said, it has made the world come closer and interconnected, right? So through these various texts of our syllabus, we'll try to understand, what are the various aspects of globalization in a sustainable global order, right? We will see how cross-cultural encounters also take place, right, in the literature of the world. On this note, I will come to Roland Barthes' essay, Toys, which is taken from his book Mythologies. So Mythologies was originally published in 1957, which is a collection of short essays, right? So in this book, in short, Barthes says that myths are created in the modern world, right? So one such myth is created by the idea of toys, and we will see it soon in the lecture, right? But in short, basically, if I just summarize, he's just trying to tell you that toys, and in this case he talks about the French toys because he's a French philosopher. He says toys are social constructs. But let me tell you that he's talking about French toys, but at the same time, it can be read in context of all human civilization, right? Even India, right? So basically, Barthes is saying how the French toys are also social constructs. He's telling how the French toys are made from an unnatural chemical material, and then he also lastly gives the alternative of those French toys, right? Then he also talks about the certain disadvantages of those French toys. So we'll read that also. This one more important point is that French toys, they actually go on to socialize the behavior of a child, right? Any matter. And by French toys, Barthes is saying he's referring to French toys, but this can be is and it's absolutely true in context of the entire world, right? So all the toys, they make child a user rather than an innovator. This is the point that Barthes is making. This is a significant point because the toys that we play with since our childhood, they make us a user, right? Not a creator. So there is a difference between using something and creating something. It's always better to become a creator, isn't it? Rather than simply a user. Because that involves more of our imaginative powers. But when it comes to these French toys, Barthes says that he's of the opinion that toys make you users, they socialize you, and then ultimately you stop questioning things and you start accepting things as they are, and in the process you ruin your mental and your critical capabilities from the childhood itself, right? So look at the way that Barthes described the essay, mythology in the introductory chapter, in the introductory part of this book. You can see, and I'll be showing you on the screen now. He says the starting point of these reflections was usually a feeling of impatience at the sight of the naturalness with which newspaper art and common sense constantly dress up a reality which, even though it is the one we live in, is undoubtedly determined by history. Right? So he uses the term myth for the way cultural phenomena work to persuade people how the social forces shaping them are in fact natural. So in short, he's saying that whatever the media shows you, whatever the newspaper shows you, whatever the popular discourse shows you, whatever the television, OTT platforms, YouTube, Instagram, Netflix, Hotstar platform, any platform for that matter, whatever they show you, they are not natural. They are all societal constructs. It's high philosophy, right? So, for example, marriage is a human institution, caste is a human institution, patriarchy is also a human institution, and these are constructed by society. These are all social constructs. It was not preordained, it was not natural, but it was institutionalized, right, by humans. Patriarchy, institutionalized by humans. Okay, so that is what we mean by an institution. So Roland Barthes says that even when we think, even what we think as common sense is in fact determined by history, right? So look at the next line. He says, he uses the term myth for the way cultural phenomena works to persuade people how the social forces shaping them are in fact natural. But is it natural? No, it's not. We need to know that it is not natural. Everything around us, whether it is patriarchy or so anything around us is made to look natural, but in reality it is not natural, right? So this is the point that Barthes is trying to put. Okay, I hope you have understood it. We need to understand that it is not natural and make sure that if it damages our social fabric, then we as humans, we as educationists, we have to uncover the truth. This is philosophy, and Barthes was not an ordinary sociologist or a philosopher. He had such a profound effect not just on literature, but apart from literature, even in history, philosophy, sociology, when it comes to philosophy. So according to Barthes, the very thing is that everything is socialized. They are constructs and they are societal constructs. Now he begins his essay, and I'll start reading the essay from here, and I'm going to read the line, and then I'll be offering my explanation. Look at the very first sentence. He says, all the toys one commonly sees are essentially a microcosm of the adult world. Right? Microcosm of the adult world. This is what he is referring to. And then he says, they are all reduced copies of human object, as if in the eyes of the public the child was all told nothing but a small man. So he's just talking about toys, as a microcosm of the real world. The next few lines are also very important. He says, French toys always mean something, and this something is always entirely socialized, constituted by the myths, the techniques of the modern adult life, the army, broadcasting, post office, medicine, schools, hairstyling, transport, and science, and so on and so forth, right? So come to the next part. The next part, as we read, we'll understand. He says that the French toys prepare the child to accept them all by constituting for him, even before he can think about it, the alibi of a nature which has at all times created soldier, postman, and Vespa. Toys here reveal the list of all the things the adult does not find unusual: war, bureaucracy, ugliness, Martians, etc. Let me just tell you one thing, that when you were growing up, we were all told what is ugly and what is not. Therefore, the idea of ugliness and beauty is also a social construct, right? So, just let me just give you a very brief example, a very common example. You give a cockroach or a snake to a young baby and they are not afraid of it. They might just put it in their mouth, the entire cockroach in their mouth, without thinking of the consequences, because they are not born with the fear of cockroach, right? So, with the fear of a snake. But with time, we are socialized into that through popular media, or you say through television, right? So when it is then that we come to realize that snakes are venomous, isn't it? So even if not all the snakes are venomous, we still believe that all the snakes are venomous, right? So this is socialization. I hope that I made my point very clear through this very commonplace example, right? So the main point, according to Barthes, is that everything is socialized. These toys are also social constructs, because due to these toys, everything appears natural and plain to the child, and ultimately he stops thinking, and ultimately then he starts accepting things as they are, and then finally he just starts using the things rather than creating it, right? So there was this popular philosopher. I mean, this is the purpose of philosophy. I don't remember the name of the philosopher, but there is this very famous quote that the purpose of philosophy is not to find answers to the questions, but rather to make us understand that the way that we are questioning things, it is in itself a problem. Even our questioning the things and the particular way in which we question things, it is in itself a problem, right? So this is high philosophy, but I mean, without digressing, let us move forward now without digressing. So then the next line, he says, there exist, for instance, dolls which urinate. They have an esophagus. One gives them a bottle, they wet their nappy. Soon, no doubt, milk will turn to water in the stomach. This is meant to prepare the girl for the causality of housekeeping, to condition her to her future role as a mother. The child can only identify himself as owner, as user, never as creator. He does not invent the world. He just uses it. Right? So these are the most important lines in this entire essay. And these lines are self-explanatory. What is being conditioned? Females. Women are being conditioned to work at home, and they must make chai and coffee and all that stuff. Right? And the boys must not do the same. They have different aspects to take care of. This is what the society tells them, right? Similarly, for boys playing battle games like, for example, the very popular PUBG, or fighting with guns in their childhood, or racing games, or racing, cars, driving games, playing sports, playing, gun games related to guns, army games. So it's a way to condition them for war, right? And real life adulting, to condition them for what men might face in their life later on. And also, when I talked about the idea of a woman, of young children, the popular game Ghar Ghar Khelna, which is a popular game, that some of you might have played, and or might have observed others playing that, other women playing that. So these are the ways of conditioning women, right, from their childhood. And since these are unnatural social constructs, we need to break free from these stereotypes. These are all stereotypes. Let us come now to the last paragraph, where he discusses the material used in creating French toy. This is again the third major point that he makes in this entire essay. A question has come from this aspect, several times in the exam. So he says that the current toys are made of a graceless material, and he says that it is the product of chemistry, not of nature. It destroys all the pleasures. 2 lines below, the sweetness, the humanity of touch, right? And then he even says that the gradual disappearance of wood, in spite of its being an ideal material because of its firmness and its softness and the natural warmth of its touch, right? So Roland Barthes here is stressing on the unnaturalness of the toys, right? So he uses their building material as a starting point to point out at the hideous unnaturalness of toys, right? So rather he suggests that the child should have been given a toy made of, say, wood. But why? Why wood? Because wood is firm, it is soft, there is a natural warmth in its touch, right? So he says the toys should rather be constructed by wood. If you look at the next line, stressing importance of wood, he says that it does not shatter, right? It wears out. It can last a longer time. Live with the child, alter little by little the relations between the object and the hand. And then he says wood makes essential objects for all time. Henceforth, and then he talks about his own country. He says, I mean, the French toys. He says toys are chemical in the substance and color, and these toys die very quickly, and once dead, they have no posthumous life for the child. And here the essay ends. Hence, we must have toys which can invent the creativity of the child, rather than giving them preconditioned, pre-set out, and pre-thought out toys. Only meant to condition them in a particular way. So basically, towards the end, Barthes is hinting at the capitalistic streak of generating demand, to supply for the material benefit of the capitalists themselves. You look at the vintage stuff 50, 70 years down the line and they're still, quite robust. Why is it so? Because the new items, that's the demand and supply. Because there is a hidden capitalistic streak of generating artificial demand, and we don't even realize that capitalism is making a fool out of all of us. So that material is used to create stuff nowadays which wears out more quickly, so that more can be purchased, and more can be purchased sooner. This is exactly the case of French toys. The unnatural, the weird, the hideous chemical material of the dolls, the toys, is a case in point which Barthes is pointing out, isn't it? So I hope the readers were able to get some good ideas, and in short, I have tried to summarize and also explain in a critical manner the various aspects related to the French toys. So that brings this lecture to an end. I hope this highly philosophical essay made you think deeply about the social order that you are living in, and the way that we are all conditioned, right, and socialized into thinking in particular ways by the dominant ideology and the conditioning of the society. Do let me know what you think about this lecture, and please feel free to raise queries and engage in discussions below in the chat box, right, in the comment section. I will see you soon in another lecture, most probably this time by the poet Imtiaz Dharkar. I'll be doing At the Lahore Kadhai, which is a poem. That will be our topic in the next lecture. So on that note, I'll see you shortly. Thank you for watching Hansraj e-Samvaad. Goodbye. Take care.